box with $50,000. Because money doesn't create habits. It only exposes them. That is why the 1% live differently. They don't wait for some day when I have more to start taking it seriously. They manage every single dollar from the moment it is small. While 99% spend carelessly and pray for miracles, the 1% act as if every financial decision is a direct order to their future. Ask yourself honestly, do you know exactly where your money went today? Do you clearly see the little expenses slipping out of your pocket each day? Most people don't dare to look. They avoid it the way they avoid a mirror that reflects weak habits. But that avoidance is not harmless. It eats away at self-respect and turns money into an invisible shackle. By contrast, the 1% treat numbers as allies. They record, analyze, and question every flow of money. Not because they are obsessed, but because they understand one truth. Real power comes from transparency. When you know where every dollar is, you control it. When you don't, it controls you. In the 1% mindset, money is neither a gamble nor an untamed beast. It is a tool, and a tool only obeys those who know how to use it. Most people let money drag them into a cycle. Paycheck comes in, emotional spending, shortfall, waiting for the next paycheck. That loop is nothing more than a hamster wheel. You run endlessly but never move forward. The 1% break that loop by changing the starting point. They don't ask how much can I spend, they ask what do I want to build. They start with the destination, then work backward to design the path. That is strategic thinking as opposed to reactive thinking. You can see the difference in how they face reality. Ordinary people choose illusion, it's probably not that bad. The 1% choose truth. How much debt am I really in? Where have I been wasteful? What can I cut right now? The truth may be bitter, but only truth liberates. Picture this. You are standing on a ship full of leaks. It is pointless to dream about adding a bigger sail. The urgent task is to patch the leaks before the ship sinks. Money works the same way. Earning more doesn't necessarily solve the problem if you haven't learned to keep it, if you haven't built the habit of management. The most defining trait of the 1% mindset is that they don't confuse desire with discipline. Everyone desires freedom. Everyone wants wealth. But desire produces nothing. Discipline does. The 1% accept saying no to instant gratification so they can keep a long-term yes for freedom. They don't seek thrill in every new purchase. They find pride in seeing their assets move in the right direction. On a deeper level, the 1% mindset is a different definition of dignity. When they control money, they no longer fear the debt collection call, no longer tremble when bills arrive. They hold their heads high, not because of flashy wealth, but because they have proven to themselves they can take charge. That dignity, that peaceful sleep cannot be bought with any loan. It only comes when you truly take the wheel of your financial life. Most people vaguely believe that money is the goal. The 1% understand that money is only fuel. Fuel is not for admiring, it is for powering the engine of freedom, freedom of choice, freedom of time, freedom to live by one's own values. That is the true dividing line between those who own money and those who are owned by it. And that is why the first step of any journey is to transform your mindset. If you still think money will automatically fix your problems, you've already placed yourself in a losing position. If you see money as an enemy, you'll keep fighting until you're exhausted. Only when you decide to master it with data, with strategy, with discipline, do you truly begin to enter the 1%. You may ask, where is the starting point? The answer is not in your salary, not in your job, not in luck. It begins with the smallest decision. Stop pretending. Stop pretending you're fine when you're suffocating. Stop pretending you're not wasteful when money leaks out daily. Stop pretending you're unlucky when what you really lack is discipline. When the 1% choose transparency, they choose to face the truth even when it hurts because they know short-term pain is easier to bear than long-term regret. That is what makes them the few. If the 1% mindset had to be condensed into a single command, it would be confront, control, create. Confront reality without sugarcoating. Control through systems instead of emotions. Create through discipline instead of chance. From there, every next step is just a consequence. Saving or investing, paying off debt, or building passive income, all of it is meaningless if you haven't first crossed the initial threshold, changing the way you think. No one can carry you to the other side. Not the government, not your company, not miracles. Only you and the decision you make right now that you will no longer live as just another number in the 99%. You choose to step into the few. You choose the 1% mindset. If this video inspired you, hit that like button to spread the positive energy and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on life-changing insights. But don't stop there. I want to hear from you. Comment below and share your biggest takeaway or the one step you're committing to today. And make sure to turn on the notification bell because the next video will reveal powerful strategies to break your limits and unlock your best self. We're building a community of action takers and dreamers, and I want you to be part of it. The simple truth that most people dare not face is this: financial chaos does not disappear on its own. It does not dissolve over time, it does not shrink through prayer, nor can it be hidden behind a few dismissive shrugs of, "It's probably not that bad." With every day of delay, that chaos digs deeper the gap between you and self-mastery. Ordinary people fear numbers. They don't want to look at their bank statements, they don't want to open debt notification emails, they don't want to know exactly where they've overspent. They hide the truth even from themselves, as if avoiding it would make the problem vanish. In reality, that avoidance only makes the problem swell like an untreated illness that shifts from easily curable to terminal. In contrast, those who step into the 1% understand that transparency is the only beginning. They shine a flashlight into every dark corner because they know that only when light reaches it can the shadow dissolve. Facing reality is not about punishing oneself with guilt, but about reclaiming control. Try something that seems simple. Write down everything you owe. Don't round off, don't guess, don't avoid. Every credit card balance, every consumer loan, every dollar of interest accumulating. Alongside that list, overdue bills, fixed monthly expenses that you often forget out of fear. That list itself is the mirror of truth, and only when you look into that mirror does the journey truly begin. People often say, know yourself, know your enemy, and you will win 100 battles. In finance, knowing yourself means knowing every number, every habit. You cannot fight an enemy whose name you refuse to call. One point needs emphasis: cleaning up financial chaos is not just about dealing with debt. It is also about dragging into the light the habits that quietly eat away at your wealth, the small but repeated expenses, the app subscriptions you never use, the impulse card swipes for instant emotional relief. These fragments add up to a major leak, draining your wallet day by day. The danger of chaos does not lie in the money lost, but in the state of being out of control. That feeling hums like background noise, leaving you tense without knowing why, sleepless without clear cause. It erodes your self-trust, makes you avoid planning for the future out of fear that the numbers will expose the truth. So where does cleanup begin? Not with a flashy expense tracking app, nor with trivial saving tips. The starting point is radical honesty. Honesty with yourself about where you've been wasteful, how you've delayed responsibility, how you've allowed impulses to override reason. Only with honesty can any tool have real effect. Put pen to paper and write down every line. Record the debt, the interest rate, the due date. Record your income, your fixed costs, your variable expenses. At first, it may feel suffocating, but that very suffocating moment is the start of rebirth. Just as a doctor cannot treat a patient who hides their symptoms, you cannot heal your finances if you keep hiding from yourself. One common misconception is this: when my income increases, I'll clean things up. In reality, those who can't manage $500 will never manage $5,000. Larger income only magnifies existing habits. What needs to change is the habit, not the number on the paycheck. And new habits can only be formed when you have the courage to face your current situation head-on. Many fear that taking inventory will plunge them into despair. In fact, it is the very antidote. What has kept you anxious all this time is not the debt itself, but the vagueness. When everything is clear, you know exactly where you stand, and from there you can chart the path forward. Often the real number may even be smaller than the vague dread that has haunted your mind. Cleanup is not a one-time act. It is a process, a habit, revolution. It begins with cutting out meaningless expenses, continues with setting up a system of regular tracking, and is maintained with a weekly self-check. Am I moving forward or backward? A simple yet effective trick: attach positive emotion to this process. Instead of viewing note-taking as torture, see it as a ritual of reclaiming freedom. Each line you write down is one step toward breaking invisible chains. Each expense you cut is a portion of strength returned to you. In the philosophy of the 1%, cleaning up financial chaos is a rite of passage. It is not glamorous, not exciting, often uncomfortable, but it is the only door to the world of control and freedom. Those who dare walk through it lay the solid foundation to build any tower afterward. Those who avoid it will forever build on sand. You can imagine your own future one day. When you open your bank account, you no longer flinch at an unexpectedly low balance. When you receive a bill, your heart no longer clenches. When someone asks about your debt, you can answer clearly without shame. That is not a distant dream. It is the reward of cleaning the chaos beginning today. The power of this action lies in mental liberation. Once you know your true condition, every other decision, saving, investing, long-term planning becomes clear. Conversely, without the foundation of transparency, every plan is just a castle built on sand. A different life does not begin by earning more, but by stopping waste, stopping avoidance, and stopping pretense. These are the first three moves to step out of the 99%. Cleaning financial chaos is not a technical task. It is a declaration: I will no longer live as a victim. When you sit down, face the numbers, cut away habits, you are asserting your right to lead. And from that very moment, you are no longer the one running from truth. You become the one using truth to rewrite destiny. A ship does not only sink because of storms at sea, but also because of small leaks day after day. Personal finance is the same. Sometimes the enemy is not the big debts or sudden crises, but the dripping leaks, the money lost in daily habits that seem harmless. People often underestimate the accumulation of little things that don't matter, only to be bewildered at the end of the month when their account is empty. These leaks take many forms: a quick coffee bought in the morning, an app subscription rarely opened, online orders made just to fill boredom. Each small item seems trivial, but together they create a silent hemorrhage that eats away at your financial freedom. The difference with the 1% is that they recognize the nature of these leaks early. For them, discipline in the small things is the fortress that protects the bigger goals. They understand that you cannot talk about saving, investing, or building wealth while still letting each coin fly away in unconscious habits. Money, like energy, always flows along the path you've set. Without awareness, it will find its way into wasteful dead ends. You may ask yourself, what's the big deal with a few cups of coffee? The answer lies in repetition. 1 cup a day, 30 cups a month, 360 cups a year. The problem is not the taste, but the hidden exchange. You trade a slice of your future freedom for a moment of fleeting satisfaction. Stopping the bleeding does not mean eliminating all pleasures, not living anymore. It means asking a sharp question. What purpose does this expense serve? Does it bring me closer to freedom or push me further away? Every time you question yourself, you strengthen the habit of distinguishing between value and emotion. Look at your account over the past 30 days. Which expenses, if cut, would leave your life completely unchanged? Those are the points of hemorrhage that need to be closed. Surprisingly, many people spend millions each year on things they don't even remember buying, not because they needed them, but because they weren't paying attention. One of the most insidious traps is disguised emotional spending. You tell yourself you deserve a reward after a long day. You just buy one little thing for fun. But let's be honest, how many times has that reward turned into a habit? How many times has that little thing accumulated into something big? That is not reward or punishment, but a false comfort for emotions left unresolved. The 1% also face stress, pressure, and fatigue, but they don't let money become their sedative. They find healthier outlets: exercising, reading, conversations, building skills. They understand that if you use money to heal emotions, the price you pay is long-term freedom. To stop waste, the first step is a simple tool: track every expense. It may sound tedious, but it is like looking in the mirror under white light, nowhere left to hide. When every dollar is recorded, you are forced to face your habits. After a week, you may be shocked to see how much you've spent on things that bring no value. The next step is to build barriers. Do not place blind trust in willpower. Willpower can collapse at the end of a long day. Instead, change your environment, remove stored cards from shopping sites, unsubscribe from marketing emails, add confirmation steps at checkout. When impulses are slowed, reason has time to step in. Stopping the bleeding also means recognizing the difference between convenience and abusing convenience. Technology brings ease, But that very ease creates spending traps. One click to order food, one swipe to renew a subscription all make spending invisible. That invisibility numbs our sense of reality like a wound bleeding in silence. To stop waste, make spending conscious, pay cash for certain things, or at least read the amount out loud before confirming. When you seal the leaks, something remarkable happens. The ability to accumulate suddenly opens up, not because you earn more, but because you stop letting money flow away. Like someone holding a leaky bucket, the most important task is not to fetch more water, but to patch the bottom. Only then does the water start to rise. Stopping waste carries a deeper value. It restores self-respect. Every dollar you keep is proof that you are alert enough not to be led by emotions. That self-respect is a greater reward than any purchase could ever be. Some argue, if life is calculated that carefully, where is the fun? But look closely, fun for how long? Fun for 10 minutes drinking coffee, then worry for a week because your account is short. Fun for a few hours shopping, then sleepless nights over credit card debt. True joy doesn't come from buying more, but from the peace of knowing you are not chained by debt, not pressured by every choice. That is a quiet but lasting joy, the joy of control. One effective strategy is the delay rule. Any purchase outside of essentials, leave it for 24 hours. Many urges will vanish on their own. What remains are the real needs. When you can separate the two, you've already stepped one foot out of the trap of emotional spending. Challenge yourself, spend 1 month without buying things just to feel better. Instead, move that money into a savings or investment account. At the end of the month, look at the accumulated figure that is the mirror reflecting the new power you've regained. Stopping financial bleeding is not just saving, it is a statement of identity. You are telling yourself, I am strong enough not to be controlled by ads, by the crowd, by unconscious clicks. That affirmation lifts you above the average where most still chase short-term emotions and lament long-term consequences. Remember, freedom does not collapse in one day. It erodes with every dollar, and it doesn't take a miracle to rebuild. It only takes sealing the leaks. Every dollar you keep today is a brick laid on the path to tomorrow's independence. Stopping the bleeding is not an act of harshness, but of wisdom. It does not take away joy. It returns to you the real joy, the joy of knowing that every dollar you spend serves a life of purpose, not a moment of oblivion. That is the spirit of the 1%. They do not let a single drop go to waste. And from that very meticulousness, they build endurance. It is not wealth that brings dignity. It is discipline that creates dignity even before you possess assets. A person lacking discipline in money, no matter how high their income, can easily become someone led by the nose by money, while someone who knows how to set limits for themselves, even with modest beginnings, walks with unshakable confidence. Discipline is the backbone of financial life. It marks the difference between those who merely exist in worry and those who live with their heads held high. Those who chase instant emotions often pay with sleepless nights, while those who restrain their spending and stick to their plans enjoy peaceful sleep, a form of invisible wealth that money cannot buy. Dignity is not abstract. It is visible in how you react when bills arrive, when credit card payments are due, when an unplanned expense appears. The undisciplined person startles, denies, makes excuses. The disciplined person calmly opens the bill, checks it against the prepared budget, and resolves it in order. In that very moment, you can see the difference: on one side, helplessness; on the other, dignity. In the eyes of the 1%, dignity does not come from luxury cars or expensive watches, but from self-control. They know that a person's worth is not in what they wear on the outside, but in how much they master the impulses within. Why are discipline and dignity so tightly linked? Because discipline is the promise you keep to yourself. When you set a rule to save a portion of your income, to never overspend your budget, to track every expense, and you keep that promise, you prove to yourself that you are trustworthy. Every time you keep your promise, self-respect is reinforced. Every time you break it, dignity cracks. You may fool others with appearances, but you cannot fool yourself. When you know you just squandered money on something meaningless, even if no one condemns you, you still feel a fracture inside. Conversely, when you resist temptation and stay true to your plan, a quiet pride rises that is dignity. Many fear discipline, believing it makes life harsh. In truth, discipline does not erase joy. It filters for true joy. It removes short-term thrills to preserve long-term peace. It does not take away freedom. It restores it, the freedom of not being enslaved by bills, weighed down by debt, haunted by spending. Discipline is not a prison. It is a door. And on the other side of that door lies the confidence that you live by your own standards, not dragged by circumstance. The undisciplined live in a whirlpool: earn, spend, worry, borrow, earn again. They are like rudderless ships tossed wherever the waves push them. The disciplined are different. They are captains. They know the destination, keep their hands steady on the wheel, and accept the storms in order to stay on course. You might think a small ship cannot resist the ocean, but the truth is discipline turns the ship into a fortress. Storms never vanish, but with discipline, they become challenges, not death sentences. Consider a simple example. Two people both earn $1,000. The first spends it all, even borrows more. The second stays disciplined, saves 10%, invests consistently, spends within limits. After 10 years, what does the first have? A trail of debt and pressure. The second, assets, along with the self-respect of having mastered themselves. The gap is not only in numbers, but in the dignity forged through every small decision. Discipline in finance is also training for other areas of life. When you can restrain yourself from an unnecessary expense, you are also building the ability to resist other temptations, procrastination, easy pleasures, impulsive choices. Discipline is a kind of mental muscle. The more you train, the stronger it gets, and that muscle lifts your whole life above the ground of mediocrity. Another subtle point: discipline does not mean dryness. The financially disciplined do not live to count every cent, but to know that every dollar they spend has meaning. That conscious choice makes joy deeper. A vacation paid with prepared money is always sweeter than one paid with debt. An item bought through planning always makes you prouder than one bought on impulse. There you see dignity take shape, not the joy of the impulsive, but the joy of the master. Ask yourself what makes you hold your head higher: showing off a new item for a few days, or knowing you overcame temptation to keep a promise to yourself. The latter builds a foundation that never shakes. Do not underestimate this mental power. In a world where everyone easily chases the gaze of others, maintaining discipline is a quiet act of rebellion. It declares that you do not need external approval to feel enough. Discipline and dignity are two sides of the same coin. One side is daily action, the other is the value you carry inside. When you stay steadfast, you lift yourself up. When you indulge, you bring yourself down. That difference is not immediately visible, but accumulated over years, it becomes an unerasable gap. And that is the choice before you live as someone dragged down by debt or live as someone free with head held high. No one else decides this. Money is only the measure. What truly defines class lies in discipline. Financial freedom is not the result of sudden opportunity, but the reward of repeated discipline. And once discipline takes root, you will see an even greater change. You are not only wealthier, but nobler. That is the true meaning of the equation. Discipline equals dignity. The way a person treats money does not only reveal their standard of living, it also exposes how they define their own self-worth. Money does not speak, but it faithfully records every choice, every belief, and the level of respect you give yourself. The majority see money as a tool to satisfy immediate needs, to escape emotions, to patch inner voids with fleeting shopping sprees. The minority, the 1%, see money as an ally that deserves respect, care, management, and a rightful place within the structure of life. And the difference lies in three layers: language, habits, and systems. When these three intersect, finances become a solid foundation instead of a burden. Language is the starting point. What you say about money is not just meaningless words, but silent orders you send to your mind. Those who constantly repeat phrases like "I'm not good at managing money," "money comes and goes," or "maybe I'll never get ahead," are painting themselves into the role of losers. Repeat it long enough and they believe it. Then their behavior obeys that negative belief. By contrast, the 1% know how to use language to reset the pattern. I'm learning to manage more effectively. I make money, serve long-term goals. I am disciplined in spending. The change may seem small, but every phrase is a brick that builds attitude. Language won't make you rich overnight, but it shapes your thinking, and thinking directs behavior. Someone who sees money as a valued companion cannot continue squandering it like garbage. From language, we move to the second layer: habits. Money does not vanish in one large act of waste. It erodes bit by bit through small daily actions. A coffee bought in a rush every morning may not make you poor, but accumulated over years it becomes a huge sum. Cheap as nothing app subscriptions that seem harmless devour millions each year. The idea of treating yourself with unneeded purchases multiple times a month is the black hole that swallows finances. Those who lack respect for money often excuse themselves with phrases like, "Just a little, it's nothing but that very chain of nothing steals future freedom." On the other hand, those who track and control their money don't live in illusion. They know exactly where their money went today, how much will remain tomorrow, and what adjustments must be made next week. Transparency creates power because once the numbers are clear, the mind can no longer deceive itself. Habits extend beyond spending to how one views money in relation to the future. The undisciplined always wait for when I have more, I'll save. But the 1% understand that if you cannot manage 500, then 5000 or 50000 will only multiply the chaos. Money does not change character, it amplifies it. Someone irresponsible with little will collapse with much. Someone disciplined with little will grow stronger as their finances expand. Thus, habits are not just a chain of actions, they are the core of financial dignity. If language is the promise and habits are the action, then the system is the structure that ensures the promise is not broken. No one can rely on willpower alone to sustain discipline forever. Emotions always fluctuate, temptation always arises, and fatigue always lurks. That is why the 1% do not leave their financial destiny to daily moods. They build systems to protect themselves. A simple system may begin by splitting accounts, one for fixed expenses, one for savings, one for investments, one for fun. Money is allocated the moment income arrives without waiting to see what's left. They even set up automatic transfers so they have no chance to make excuses. Periodically, they sit down to review the numbers like a business audit to ensure everything runs in the right direction. The power of a system lies in freeing you from inner battles. Once everything is set, you no longer have to ask yourself each time, should I save or not, should I invest or not? The decision was made beforehand. The system turns discipline into default, turns financial management into a smooth-running machine, leaving mental energy for larger strategies instead of being drained by trivial choices. The synergy of the three layers, language, habit, systems, creates a loop of strength. Positive language shapes belief. Belief nurtures habits. Habits are reinforced by systems, and systems reflect the language. Once this circle closes, personal finance becomes solid. Outsiders may not see it, but inside you know every dollar you hold has meaning, a place to go, a reason to exist. It is important to note that respecting money does not mean greed or idolizing it. Those who respect money are not people anxiously counting every cent with worried eyes. They are those who know that behind every dollar is time, effort, and life energy. Losing money to meaningless purposes is no different from losing part of your life. Conversely, preserving it, using it wisely, and investing it correctly is how they respect themselves, respect their dreams, and respect their future freedom. No one can pretend forever in this world. You may flaunt wealth outwardly, but if your financial system is rotting inside, you will always feel lost. You may live simply in front of others, but if your language, habits, and systems are healthy, you will carry a quiet pride, the kind that needs no proof. Respecting money at its core is how you declare, I respect my own life. And once you reach that point, money no longer rules you, but becomes a loyal tool. It does not define you, but it reflects your dignity, not through words, but through numbers that never lie. One of the least talked about secrets yet, one that separates those who are always unstable from those who gradually step into the zone of financial safety, is the ability to automate. It is no coincidence that the wealthy 1% regard automation as a survival principle. They understand that personal discipline has limits, emotions always fluctuate, willpower sometimes weakens. Therefore, the only way to ensure finances stay on the right track in the long run is to build a self-operating system where smart decisions are pre-programmed, independent of the highs or lows of any given moment. The first thing to realize, automation is not just a technique, it is a philosophy of life. When you set up a transfer into a savings account immediately after payday, you are sending a message. The future takes priority over the present. When you let the system allocate a regular investment, you are proving that wealth does not come from lucky strikes, but from consistent repetition. And when you allow bills to be paid automatically, you are freeing your mind from petty worries, reserving energy for more important decisions. The difference between the majority and the minority is not in their ability to make money, but in how they lay their foundation. Ordinary people often procrastinate today, too busy to make a transfer this week, needing to shop, so they pause saving this month, holding off investing because it's not certain yet. Each delay is like a missing brick, leaving the financial house unfinished. The 1% do not rely on their own perfection. They create mechanisms so that everything happens regardless of mood. They don't intend to save, they let machines do it. They don't try to remember to pay debt, they let the system handle it. That is, intelligence shifting the burden off willpower, turning principles into defaults. Automation can be imagined as laying down tracks for a train. Once the rails are set, the train does not need to search for the route, does not risk losing its way. It simply charges straight to its destination. Finances work the same way. Once money flows are predetermined, how much for expenses, how much for savings, how much for investing, you no longer wrestle with countless small decisions. You no longer face temptation with the mindset of, should I keep this or not? Because the money has already left, already secured or invested. And it is this very simplicity that creates freedom. Most people assume automation makes life rigid, lacking flexibility. In reality, flexibility only has value once you have a stable foundation. You cannot talk about financial creativity when you cannot even handle your monthly bills. You cannot discuss large-scale investing when you still forget to pay debts on time. Automation builds a solid base, and from that base comes space for experimentation, for choice, for daring to step into breakthrough opportunities. A typical example, two people with the same salary. The first puts money into a general account and spends according to impulse. The second splits clearly on payday. 20% goes to savings, 10% to investments, 5% to skill development, and only the rest may be spent. After a few years, the result is undeniable. The first has only memories of shopping. The second has accumulated savings, an investment portfolio, and new skills that open up income opportunities. The difference is not in the money they receive, but in the fact that the second person laid tracks for money to run in the right direction. Look at it from a psychological angle. When you still rely on daily decisions, you constantly drain energy on trivial choices. Every time you face temptation, you must fight with yourself, and no one can win such a fight forever. Automation ends the battle from the start. It removes the possibility of failure by locking in the wrong choice before you even make it. That is not restriction, it is liberation. More importantly, automation teaches you a profound principle. Wealth comes from steady accumulation, not sudden leaps. Each time the system deducts a small amount, it may seem insignificant, but accumulated over years, it becomes the power of compounding, of persistence. Those who do not automate will always be in the state of waiting for the right moment, but that moment never comes. Those who automate create certainty. They don't need to wait, because every month, every week, they have already taken one step, however small, toward freedom. Automation also demonstrates respect for your own time. How many people waste hours stressing over small expenses or berating themselves for forgetting to pay bills on time? That time, if dedicated to self-development, creativity, or rest, would yield far greater value. This is why successful people always seek to turn repetitive tasks into systems. They understand that time is a non-renewable asset, and nothing is more foolish than squandering it on tasks machines can handle. Automation does not remove responsibility. On the contrary, it demands clarity to design the system correctly from the start and discipline to maintain periodic oversight. Each week, you still need to sit down, review, evaluate, and adjust if necessary. But this is strategy-level engagement, completely different from struggling daily with petty decisions. When you control the system, you control your life. Therefore, the question is not, should I automate my finances, but how will I design it to serve my goals? The answer begins with simple steps: separating accounts, setting up automatic transfers, scheduling review reminders. Then you upgrade, gradually allocating to long-term funds, establishing an investment strategy, automating learning and self-development. Each step is another layer of protection, another reinforcement, making the system more resilient. And then one day you will notice the subtle difference. You are no longer living reactively, chasing after money, but money is moving within a system that serves you. You are no longer preoccupied with petty worries, but free to focus on building greater things. That is the moment automation proves its worth, not only making you wealthier, but giving you inner peace, something no number can measure. Automating the foundation is not optional, it is a prerequisite. For if the base is not locked in every structure you build, savings plans, investment dreams will be nothing but castles in the sand. But once the foundation is automated, you can build anything you want, knowing the system is silently working for you day after day, tirelessly, without distraction. That is the wisdom of the 1%. They do not fight endlessly with themselves. They build systems to win from the start. And it is precisely for this reason that while others are still stuck in the cycle of earn and spend, they are already quietly far ahead on the path to freedom. There is a hidden enemy in every financial journey. It does not appear in the form of a bill nor lurk inside high-interest debt. It exists in every small decision, in the moment when reason is defeated by a sudden wave of emotion. That is emotional spending, so common that nearly everyone has fallen into it, but so few are clear-headed enough to name it and cut it off completely. Emotional spending does not come from real need. It shows up when you are tired, discouraged, under pressure, or when you want to prove something to others. One click to order fast food in a bad mood, an impulsive shopping trip to fill loneliness, an expensive item bought just to show off. They all have one thing in common: you do not buy with reason, but with a fleeting weakness. And the moment the emotion fades, regret quietly arrives. The problem is that emotional spending is like painkillers. It brings temporary relief, but it never heals the root cause. You're stressed at work, you buy something to feel better. But the work remains, the pressure remains, and worse, now you have added financial burden. That relief turns out to be a new chain binding you even longer. The majority treat this as normal. Everyone buys for fun sometimes. I deserve to spoil myself. But the minority understand that true freedom does not lie in satisfying impulses, but in restraining them. They know that the fleeting thrill of a new item can never compare with the serenity of not being crushed by debt, and they choose serenity. Cutting emotional spending does not mean living harshly, rejecting all pleasures. It simply means asking the right question at the right moment. Do I really need this, or am I trying to cover up some other emotion? That question is enough to strip the mask off the hidden enemy. Because once you realize you don't truly need it, you only want to escape discomfort, the wiser choice appears. One of the most powerful tools against emotional spending is the delay rule. Whenever you feel the urge to buy something outside of essentials, leave it for 24 hours. Most of the time, the craving will vanish. If, after 24 hours, you still feel the need and have a clear reason, consider it. If not, you've saved yourself from a bad decision. This is not a trick. It is a mechanism that shields reason from impulse. Another strategy is setting an emotional budget. Instead of trying to eliminate all non-rational spending, allow yourself a small, limited amount. For example, allocate 5% of your income to a comfort fund. This way you don't feel deprived, but you still maintain control. The trap lies in the absence of limits without boundaries. Every desire becomes justified. With a preset framework, you can enjoy without sliding endlessly. To cut emotional spending at its root, you must face yourself. Ask what usually triggers my overspending: stress, loneliness, or comparison with others. Once the cause is named, you can replace it with healthier outlets. If stressed, exercise, read, or talk with loved ones instead of ordering mindlessly. If lonely, seek real connection instead of shopping to fill the void. If comparison drags you down, remember that social media is just a stage, not reality. The 1% are not superhuman. They have emotions, they feel boredom, they crave comfort. But the difference is they do not let emotions decide their financial fate. They build defenses, spending limits, separate accounts, delay rules, regular check-ins, and most importantly, they train awareness. Every time temptation arises, they pause and ask, is this the person I want to become? That question severs the unconscious pull. Imagine the difference. One person led by emotion walks into a store, buys something, and comes home drowning in regret. Another in the same situation stops, acknowledges the desire, but chooses not to act. After a few uncomfortable minutes, they move on and keep their freedom. The difference is not in money, but in dignity. On one side, surrender; on the other, a quiet victory. And those quiet victories, repeated over the years, become the foundation of financial freedom. Emotional spending has another subtle trap. It is fueled by the culture of advertising. Every day, thousands of messages reach you. You deserve this. You need this to be happy. Without it, you'll fall behind. The entire media system is designed to exploit emotion, not let you think rationally. Without defenses, you easily become a puppet of marketing. The 1% do not reject society, but they recognize the game. Each time an ad appears, they smile. This is just a tactic, not the truth. That awareness makes them actors, not victims. In reality, cutting emotional spending does not make you lose joy. On the contrary, you discover a more lasting joy, the joy of mastery. Every time you overcome temptation, you affirm your dignity, and that feeling truly nourishes confidence. That joy does not fade in minutes like the joy of a new purchase. It deepens into quiet pride, lifting you day by day. Ultimately, remember that freedom does not come from having more, but from not being chained by short-term desires. Emotional spending in the end is only a shackle disguised in glitter. When you are clear-headed enough to cut it, you are removing one of the heaviest burdens on your financial journey. And that is your choice: to live in the loop of buy to feel better than regret, or to step out, accept momentary discomfort, and trade it for lasting freedom. The 1% have already chosen, and that is why they are different. No one looks forward to crises, but life never follows the script we write. A car breaking down in the middle of the road, an unexpected hospital visit, a sudden job disruption, a storm sweeping through the city, all can arrive without warning. The problem is not whether crises happen, but how you face them. Those unprepared always fall into chaos, scrambling to borrow, juggling every penny, sinking deeper under pressure. Those with a peace fund simply open their account, pay, and move on with calm. That is the difference between helplessness and mastery. An emergency fund is not a luxury for the well-off. It is the foundation of freedom. Without it, every savings plan, every investment dream can collapse after a single crisis. Imagine carefully building wealth for the future, only to have illness strike once and force you to withdraw it all. Imagine constructing an investment portfolio only to liquidate it in panic when an unexpected blow comes. Without a peace fund, you will always live in fragility, like a house that never had a solid foundation. The majority often overlook this. They think, nothing will happen. I'll deal with it if it comes. But the harsh truth is that crises never announce themselves and do not care if you are mentally prepared. The 1% understand this principle clearly. It is not if, but when. And that is why they treat the peace fund as the ultimate defensive weapon. So, how much does an emergency fund need? Experts usually say at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses. This is not an arbitrary number. It is calculated to give you enough time to recover if you lose your main income, survive a health emergency, or withstand economic turmoil. Some object I can't save that much at once. But a peace fund does not demand immediate completion. It is like building a wall, brick by brick, laid consistently until one day it stands tall, shielding you. Start with 1 million, 5 million, 10 million. Each deposit is another layer of armor. The beauty of a peace fund is that it protects not only finances, but also your mind. When you know you have reserves, you walk steadier, worry less, and make wiser decisions. Those without such a fund are often forced into the worst choices simply because they have none left, taking predatory loans, selling assets in panic, or accepting unsuitable jobs just to get by. Those with a peace fund have the right to say no to compromises that lower their dignity. Money in the account is the freedom to refuse anything that violates your values. Another subtle point: a peace fund must be kept separate, accessible, but not easily spent. If you mix it with your daily account, it will quickly be eroded by reasonable excuses like shopping or entertainment. The 1% often keep it in a separate account with stable interest, easy to withdraw when necessary, but not sitting right at hand for impulsive use. The emergency fund is not for risky investments nor for growing money. It is a fortress reserved only for true need. Some think saving for emergencies is pessimistic, as if always waiting for the worst. The reality is the opposite. The peace fund is not belief in risk, but belief in yourself. It declares, I am responsible enough to prepare for anything. And that very preparation allows you to live more optimistically, to enjoy the present more, because you are no longer haunted by the thought that one small crisis could destroy everything. Picture the contrast. Someone without an emergency fund, when their car breaks down, frantically calls around to borrow, embarrassed and panicked. Someone with a fund simply withdraws, pays for the repair, and continues their day with an undisturbed mind. The difference is not in the car, but in the inner state. One is dragged by circumstance, the other walks forward with head high. A peace fund also has a quiet but crucial function. It prevents you from destroying bigger plans. Without it, you would have to pull from long-term investments every time a crisis hits. That not only derails your financial plan, but also breaks the power of compounding the very engine of wealth. With a buffer, you protect your growing assets, letting them mature uninterrupted. The hardest part of building a peace fund is not technique, but psychology. People lack patience for results that are not immediately visible. This fund sits quietly, not yielding huge profits, not making you feel instantly richer, but its true value only shows when crisis comes. At that moment, every dollar saved turns into a lifeline. And those who prepared smile in the storm while the majority thrash in panic. Respecting money means respecting safety. Respecting yourself means giving yourself a buffer so life's blows cannot knock you down. The peace fund is a silent declaration. I will not live as someone fragile. It turns you into a person with a foundation, ready to keep moving, even when storms strike. And perhaps the deepest lesson of the peace fund is this: it not only protects you when crises come, but it changes how you live every day. When you know you have a safety net, you fear less, you worry less, and you dare to make bolder decisions. You dare to pursue work. You love to say no to compromises, to step out of your comfort zone because you know you have prepared your cushion. The peace fund, therefore, is not just money. It is confidence, self-respect, and freedom. There is a truth few dare to admit. Most of the money people spend is not to satisfy real needs, but to display an image to others. How many spending decisions are made not because we need them, but because of society's gaze? A luxury car to prove status, an expensive watch to impress lavish parties only to receive fleeting compliments. And then behind the glittering facade there are empty accounts, mounting debts, and fragile lives held up by the eyes of others. Success in the distorted definition of the majority is not freedom or serenity, but the ability to maintain an illusion. Those in the 99% are often haunted by comparison. They look around, see neighbors upgrading cars, friends flaunting houses, colleagues wearing designer brands, and in an instant their confidence wavers. They think, if I don't have it, others will look down on me. And so they throw themselves into an endless race, trying to buy recognition, trying to build an image they cannot sustain. The price is years of financial pressure, even servitude to the bank. But the greatest tragedy is not the loss of money, it is the loss of the right to define success for oneself. The 1% understand something simple: success is not about impressing others, but about not needing to impress. True success is when you are no longer controlled by the gaze of others, when you are confident enough to live by your values without having to prove anything. A modest home fully paid off holds more value than a mansion burdened with debt. A reliable car that fulfills its purpose outweighs a supercar parked only to show off. An investment account quietly compounding brings more power than a luxury item snapped and posted on social media. Redefining success is an act of liberation. It ends the cycle of earn, spend, show, owe, worry that drains the majority of their energy. When you no longer feel the need to impress, you save two of the most precious things: money and mental space. Money can serve long-term goals instead of forgettable items. The mind is freed from comparison, focusing instead on building real value. And from that, a new kind of freedom emerges. Freedom from needing praise, freedom from fearing criticism. The biggest trap of impressing others is that it never ends. You buy something, receive admiration for a week, then the crowd shifts to something new. You chase again, buy again, receive fleeting applause again, and fall back into the loop. The crowd never remembers what you showed off, but you carry the consequences forever. The wise see this game and choose not to play, because they understand the only way to win an endless game is to leave it. When you stop impressing others, you begin to ask different questions. What do I truly want for my life? What does success look like in my own eyes? If no one else saw this, would I still want it? These questions strip away the layers of display, leaving only the core of personal value. And from that core, you can build a sustainable definition of success. The 1% find pride elsewhere. Not in others' eyes, but in the transparency of opening their account and the confidence of being debt-free and the quiet pride of assets growing day by day. That is success without an audience. It is silent, but enduring, unmoved by trends, unshaken when the crowd changes topics. Redefining success is not easy because it requires stepping out of the common orbit. Society has taught you since childhood that worth is measured in material markers. From grades in school to titles on business cards, from the house you live in to the brand on your clothes, everything has been like stamps for others to judge you. Refusing to chase those stamps means accepting initial loneliness, but that loneliness is temporary. Because once you stand firm, you will discover a small group of others who have also chosen this path, people who define success by their inner standards, not external eyes. Ask yourself, what do you want to be remembered for? The things you once flaunted or the value you once created? Do you want a life of fragility under comparison or a life of serenity and self-mastery? The answer to that question will decide which group you belong to, those controlled by the gaze of others or those who draw their own definition of success. Success, once redefined, becomes simple yet profound, not living to impress but living to be free. It is not about what you can flaunt but what you can refuse to flaunt. It does not come from others' eyes, but from the peace when looking in the mirror. And when you reach this point, money is no longer a tool for proving, but fuel for creating. The 99% may chase appearances all their lives, but the 1% know that true happiness does not need the spotlight. They quietly save, quietly invest, quietly build, and one day when necessary, their results echo louder than any display. That silence is their strength. Thus, redefining success begins with a silent declaration, I will stop living to impress. From that moment, you step out of the endless race and into a different journey, the journey of freedom, of true value, of dignity, and that is success. Money is by nature a tool, but what that tool serves depends entirely on how you use it. The majority use money to buy dopamine, those fleeting highs from shopping, luxury dining, or instant entertainment. The minority, the 1%, use money to buy freedom, freedom of choice, freedom of time, freedom to live true to their values without being bound by financial pressure. These two directions create two opposing lives, one running in circles chasing short-term thrills, the other accumulating long-term energy to truly live on their own terms. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It is released whenever you experience something new, receive a reward, or satisfy a craving. In today's world, entire industries of entertainment, advertising, and consumption are built to exploit this mechanism. You buy a new phone, dopamine spikes. You book a luxury vacation, dopamine floods in. You swipe your card for an unnecessary item, dopamine bursts again. The problem is, dopamine fades quickly. When the rush passes, you need another hit. And so you dive into an endless cycle of spending, yet never feel fulfilled. The 99% accept this as normal. They work to earn money, then use money to buy dopamine doses, then work harder to replenish, then spend again, and then burn out. It is the hamster wheel you run endlessly, gasping for breath, thinking you're moving forward, when in fact you're only spinning in place. The 1% refuse to play this game. They recognize a subtle but crucial distinction. Money can buy instant feelings, but its true power lies in buying lasting serenity. And that serenity has a name, freedom. Freedom means you can say no to a job that violates your values because you are no longer forced by bills. Freedom means you can dedicate time to loved ones, passions, and learning without worrying that every passing minute creates a hole in your budget. Freedom means you have the power to choose instead of being cornered by circumstance. When you use money to buy freedom, you are laying the foundation for a life that is deep, sustainable, and unshaken by short-term emotional waves. The important question is, how do you distinguish when you're buying dopamine versus buying freedom? Look at your motive. If a spending decision stems from the urge, I want to feel better right now, it is dopamine. If it comes from the question, will this make my life calmer, freer, more secure for years to come, it is freedom. A car beyond your financial capacity just to show off is dopamine. Health insurance that frees you from fear in a crisis is freedom. A luxury watch bought for the trend is dopamine. An investment asset generating steady returns that frees you from paycheck dependence is freedom. The difference is not just in numbers, but in mental state. Dopamine leaves emptiness, forcing you to refill constantly. Freedom leaves serenity, eliminating the need to prove anything. And it is that serenity which is the true desire of all, yet pursued by so few with clarity. The wise build systems where money is not burned on fleeting thrills but channeled into freedom. They prioritize paying the future before the present. They let money accumulate, invest, and grow so one day it works for them. By doing so, they reverse the game. Instead of working for money to live, they let money create a larger life. The hamster wheel disappears, replaced by an upward journey. Another subtle truth: when you use money to buy freedom instead of dopamine, you are also redefining joy. You realize that deep joy does not come from a new item, but from the dignity of knowing you mastered yourself. That joy does not explode and fade, it settles and endures. It gives you the ability to hold your head high without showing off. It is the joy of mastery, entirely different from the thrill of being led. Today's world makes buying dopamine easier than ever. One click, one swipe, one installment plan, and you have instant joy. But freedom is not easy. It requires patience, discipline, and the willingness to reject short-term thrills in exchange for long-term serenity. The 99% choose the easy path, the 1% choose sustainability. And that is why they are different. Cutting dopamine does not mean cutting all joy. It means choosing which joy is worth living for. If a spending decision steals your freedom in the long term, it is not joy, but a trap. If a decision strengthens your confidence, resilience, and power to choose, that is true joy. And money, when used wisely, can be the tool that brings you to that joy. Imagine two scenarios. One person spends their entire monthly income on shopping, entertainment, and short-lived experiences. They feel excited briefly, then return to worry, debt, and pressure. Another person directs a large portion of their income to savings, investments, and building a peace fund. They may have fewer bursts of excitement, but they live every day with stability, unafraid of crises, never cornered into betraying their values. Who is truly happier? The answer is obvious. Ultimately, using money to buy freedom is a life declaration. I am no longer a puppet of advertising, short-term cravings, or meaningless comparison. I choose to live with clear purpose, a solid foundation, and a freedom no product can replace. That is the quiet but most powerful joy. And that is also the philosophy of the 1%. Money is not for chasing thrills, but for freeing people from chains. When you grasp this, you stop asking, what can money buy, and begin asking, how does money help me stay free? And in that moment, you truly begin to step into the land of freedom, the place dopamine can never take you. There is nothing heavier than debt hidden in the dark. It makes you live under a constant layer of silent tension, going to bed with a stabbing heart each time you think of bills, waking up with the sense that someone is watching you. You don't see the enemy clearly, but it's present in every decision, in every moment of hesitation when you want to buy or invest. That shadow is not caused by how big or small the number is, but by your refusal to face it. When you avoid it, debt swells. When you shine light on it, it loses its power. Most people do not truly know how much they owe. They guess, they estimate, they think. It's probably not too much. But thinking and knowing are two different worlds. While you continue pretending everything is fine, interest silently accumulates, bills keep rising, and your mind is worn down bit by bit. The harsh truth: debt doesn't wait for you to be ready. It grows every day. And you have only two choices: hide in the dark or switch on the light and face it. What does switching on the light mean? It means writing down every single debt, specifically leaving nothing out. From credit cards, consumer loans, money borrowed from friends, to unpaid medical bills. Record the exact amount, interest rate, term, due date. Don't sugarcoat, don't round, don't guess. Face the real numbers. Only when you see the full map will you know the road ahead. Conversely, if you keep hiding behind vagueness, you only make the road longer and steeper. The fear of writing down debt does not come from the numbers, but from the feeling of being exposed. You are forced to admit that at some point in the past you overspent, lived hastily, or made poor decisions. But remember, shame is just a shell. Inside truth carries power. It gives you the chance to take control. A person who faces debt with clarity is always stronger than one who pretends to be blind for temporary comfort. Debt is like a dark room filled with clutter. If you don't turn on the light, you keep tripping again and again. When you switch on the light, everything is laid bare and you know where to start, what to throw away, what to keep. Light turns difficult tasks into possible ones. And that is why shedding light on your debt is the first step toward financial freedom. Start by categorizing. There are short-term debts with high-interest credit cards. For example, these are the fastest eaters and must be handled first. There are long-term but stable debts, mortgages, student loans. They require sustainable planning. When you see clearly, you no longer face one massive, terrifying block, but many smaller pieces that can be tackled step by step. The vague monster transforms into a structured list, and a list can be conquered. Another truth worth emphasizing: debt does not define you. It is only a temporary state, but how you face it defines your character. The 99% avoid it, letting vagueness gnaw away at their confidence. The 1% choose to lift the lamp, endure the light, endure the truth, and then act. That action is what creates a difference in mindset. You are no longer passive. You become the one leading the game. When you shine light on debt, you also force yourself to stop lying. How many times have you told yourself, "I'll pay it off next month. This time is just an exception. It's not that much anyway." Those excuses only allow delay, so that each time you open a bill, it cuts another wound into your self-respect. But when you write it all down, there is no more hiding. You see the raw truth, and from that arises strength, the strength of determination. I will not let this continue any longer. A pivotal moment will happen. You add up the total debt, your heart races, your palms sweat, but then you exhale. Finally, you know for sure. Clarity brings a strange kind of peace, because no matter how big the number, at least it is no longer a ghost. It has shape, boundaries, and a way out. From here, you can make a repayment plan. From here, you regain part of your control. Do not fear the heaviness at the start. It will pass. Remember, light always weakens darkness. Once you have the debt map in hand, every dollar you pay back becomes a brick rebuilding dignity. And more importantly, you begin to redefine yourself from someone led by debt into someone leading their own life. Also remember, shedding light on debt is not only about financial numbers, but also mental numbers. It forces you to answer, why did I incur this debt? Was it emotional spending, chasing glamour, or a lack of systems? The essence of shedding light is exposing the root causes, so you not only repay debt, but also correct behaviors, cutting off the source. Otherwise, even after paying off, you will slip back into the same spiral. Financial freedom does not begin with wealth, but with the courage to look at your debt statement and say, I see it clearly, I will change. The very moment you face the real numbers, you are already halfway to freedom. The rest of the path is only discipline and time. Debt is only frightening when it stays in the dark. Once you shine light on it, it becomes a goal you can conquer. And when the final number is crossed out, you will not only be free from financial weight, but also carry a new strength, the conviction that any darkness, once you switch on the light, can be overcome. There is no hidden secret in how the rich manage money. Everything can be learned, but the problem is this: most people do not treat learning wealth as a serious subject. They learn to drive, learn a skill, to get a job, learn to use new technology, but rarely does anyone truly dedicate time to learning how money works. And so they remain stuck with repeating problems: debt, stress, lack of control. The rich are different because they treat personal finance as a life or death science, a skill to be trained like a muscle, not a gamble of luck. The starting point of proper learning lies in mindset. Ordinary people often think the rich got everything through luck, birth, or circumstances. That thought is both dangerous and convenient. It allows you to blame and at the same time to escape responsibility. But the harsh truth is, wealth is not the product of miracles. It is the product of persistent learning habits. The rich read books on investing, they learn how to analyze markets, they hire financial advisors, they seek out those more skilled to be guided. They learn the way a soldier studies survival tactics because they understand ignorance in money is the root cause of poverty. Look around. Ordinary people spend hours each day on social media, gossip, news, instant entertainment. The rich spend hours reading financial reports, studying trends, digesting lessons from those before them. The difference is not innate intelligence, but how they use time and how they value knowledge. For them, knowledge is a form of capital, intellectual capital. And intellectual capital, like financial capital, when accumulated enough, generates returns. Learning properly from the rich means learning how they see the world. The poor ask, how can I afford this? The rich ask, how can this asset generate returns? The poor focus on price, the rich focus on value. The poor see money as something to spend. The rich see money as a tool to buy more time and opportunities. When you begin to ask the same type of questions, you force yourself to view every financial decision through the lens of growth, not depletion. One foundational lesson: the rich always hold risk management. They don't dive into blind gambles, nor are they so fearful that they stand still. They learn how to calculate which capital can be risked, which must be preserved, absolutely what systems minimize losses if mistakes happen. The poor often think the rich are reckless. In reality, they are more cautious than anyone else. It's just that they know risk cannot be avoided, only managed. And that management skill comes from systematic learning, not from gut feelings. The rich also learn to build systems. They know human willpower is limited, emotions fluctuate, so you cannot rely on, "I'll try harder." They create automatic systems. Salaries flowing into accounts are automatically allocated into savings, investment, spending. They don't let financial decisions depend on the mood of the day. This is something you can completely learn, but only if you are humble enough to observe and copy rather than cling to old habits. Another important truth: the rich never stop learning. Even when they already have large assets, they still read, still update, still consult experts, because they know markets change daily, rules shift hourly. A complacent ego is the sharpest knife that carves away wealth. For the truly wealthy, learning is a defensive act, like keeping a weapon sharp so it doesn't fail when attacked unexpectedly. So where must you learn from? From books, from courses, from conversations with those more skilled, from observing in reality how they live and make decisions. A book on financial management can change your entire perspective on money. A conversation with a seasoned investor can save you 10 years of mistakes. A course on personal finance can help you avoid dozens of debt traps. Knowledge is out there. The question is whether you see it as a necessary investment or just a whim. Most people say they don't have time to learn. The truth is, they have too much time for meaningless things. The rich are different. They prioritize knowledge before entertainment. And because of that, they gain the most expensive form of entertainment, the freedom to live as they wish. One subtle point to remember: learning from the rich does not mean copying every step, but absorbing their mindset. You don't need to become a replica. You need to absorb principles and apply them flexibly to your own circumstances. Learn how they think long-term, how they ask questions about value, how they manage risk, how they build systems. Those principles are the foundation. The specific strategies you can adapt. Imagine if you begin to learn seriously. After 1 year, instead of reckless spending, you know how to budget. After 3 years, instead of being helpless in crisis, you have a peace fund. After 5 years, instead of having only one income source, you've built an additional stream of returns. That transformation is not a miracle, it is the direct product of applied knowledge. If you see wealth as the result of luck, you will wait your whole life in vain. If you see wealth as a subject, you will progress page by page, lesson by lesson, experience by experience, moving steadily closer. And the strange thing is, once you start learning, doors of opportunity open more often. It is as though knowledge has a magnetic pull, drawing you into a new orbit where every decision becomes clearer. The rich are not different from you in essence. They are different because they seriously learn how to control money, while the majority learn how to spend it. When you dare to change course, when you treat finance as a skill to be trained, you stop repeating the same cycle. And from that moment, you are no longer on the other side of the divide. You have stepped into the group of those who understand the rules of the game. No one is born knowing how to manage money, but everyone can learn. The only question is, will you continue sitting on the sidelines, watching with admiration and excusing yourself with the word luck? Or will you stand up, take a pen, open a book, and begin the greatest course of your life, learning wealth as a creation? Proper subject learning, until knowledge becomes habit, habit becomes system, and system becomes freedom. The modern world rewards and punishes people with a ruthless principle. If your income is tied entirely to the number of hours you work, you will forever be limited. A day has only 24 hours, a body has only so much energy, and when you are exhausted, the flow of money stops as well. The 99% are trapped in that cycle. Work, receive salary, spend, work, again, never ending. The 1% understand this law clearly and choose a different path. They separate income from hours worked. They use leverage, productizing their value, so money continues to flow even while they rest. The essence of leverage is creating outsized results without having to increase labor in equal measure. A book written once but sold tens of thousands of times, a pre-recorded course attended by thousands, a piece of software coded for months but then copied endlessly. These are all examples of leverage. Ordinary people get paid once for every effort once made. The wise get paid once for countless reuses of that same effort. The key lies in the ability to productize knowledge, skills, or experience. A skilled speaker can productize by creating an online course. A person deeply versed in marketing can write a book or create a tool. Someone with technical problem-solving skills can build a system-based service instead of just selling their time. When you productize, you transform your invisible abilities into tangible assets that can be replicated, scaled, and sold without depending on the ticking of the clock. Separating income from hours worked doesn't mean abandoning traditional work immediately. It starts with shifting your mindset from working to earn wages, to building assets, to generate cash flow. The 99% take pride in overtime hours, while the 1% take pride in creating income streams that flow even when they're absent. One person spends weekends working extra shifts to earn a bit more, while another spends the same weekend writing content, recording videos, building products, things that will sell automatically for years. Who is truly wiser? The difference also lies in this leverage isn't only in the form of technology or products, but also people and capital. The wealthy understand they cannot do everything themselves, so they hire people more skilled in areas where they are weak, delegate to systems or teams, thereby multiplying effectiveness many times over. The poor fear sharing, thinking hiring is wasteful, and so end up hoarding tasks, burning out, and never increasing their income. Human leverage is how 1 hour of your work becomes 10 or 100 through the hands of others. Another form of leverage is capital. Every dollar saved and invested properly becomes an employee working for you day and night without ever asking for leave. The wealthy use capital as an extended arm. They buy cash-flowing assets, invest in businesses, stocks, real estate. They understand that instead of grinding more hours, let money give birth to more money. In contrast, ordinary people spend all their capital trapping themselves forever in the cycle of work, more to have more, but never having enough. Productization also brings an invisible advantage: mental liberation.